Okay, welcome back to Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey. This is a podcast taking a deep dive into the entire history of the MCU, counting down to the 10-year anniversary and Avengers Infinity War, but that isn't quite yet because this is episode 14, which means it's Doctor Strange. This is Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey. I am Matt. I am joined by Ben. Ben, how is it going?
It's going good. I watched Doctor Strange recently.
Yeah. We're about to have a magical time. I mean, I guess it's not as good as Ant-Man with all my small puns, but hey. So yeah, Doctor Strange is a very strange one. Some people feel really enthusiastically about this, and I really don't understand that. This isn't going to be 2 hours, well, it's definitely not going to be 2 hours, but it's definitely not going to be an hour of us saying how bad it is. It's just, I don't get how you can feel so strongly that you put it anywhere near like your top 5, and I've seen that in rankings of the MCU films, that this is like up there with the the big ones, and it's like, what? Why? What did you see? Do you just really like getting high and watching it?
I mean, that takes us back to the comics and basically why this comic was popular back then.
But... Indeed, Pink Floyd, yeah. My hottest possible take is there's not really anything majorly wrong with it aside from problematic casting. It's not exciting. I mean, you said that it reminded you of Iron Man 1 and Captain America 1 and, their origin movies that they were doing in Phase 1. And it's like, okay, we're now really slick at production and all that, so here's a really, really polished Phase 1 film, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Ant-Man fairly recently, but Ant-Man had too much going on behind the scenes for it to really benefit, whereas this feels like we've had 3 attempts at doing this kind of movie before, because Guardians doesn't really count, so let's just take everything we learned from them and make it interesting. And, to be fair to it, it does improve on all the areas where those movies fall down.
Yeah.
I think, overall, this is a more confident structural movie than any of those 3 are, but it doesn't have the kind of heart that I feel elevates those movies above this one. It's a weird thing where, on a technical level, I'm sat there going, yeah, this is really well done, but it's almost like, on a cynical level, I'm just sat here going, you've distilled the formula and you know exactly what you're going for with this, and there's nothing much more to that behind it.
Yeah, it's like music that's really well produced, but you don't feel it. I will say it's very briskly paced, which is nice, but to a fault almost, as you will find out when we talk our way through this and you hear the plot developments. So released November 4th, 2016. X-Men Apocalypse and Suicide Squad have come out since we did Civil War. I think I saw every one of those in the cinema. I think I saw every movie that I've mentioned here in the last few in the cinema, and I walked a very long way to go see Doctor Strange. I don't know why I did it. I could have got a bus, and I was like, no, I'm just going to walk. And I had really bad leg pain, and I was sitting there watching Doctor Strange, and I was like, I'm in a bad mood. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant.
I mean, I didn't see 2 of those movies in the cinema, but I have seen both of them since, and I am happy about my choice to not see them in the cinema.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. So it's 115 minutes long, so it's on the shorter end of the spectrum. I kind of think maybe I don't know if it needed to be longer. It's just, I don't know. We'll get there. $165 million it took to make, which is less than Thor: The Dark World. A lot of CGI. I would imagine is where that cost is going. A staggering amount, in fact. Made $678 million at the box office, which is, I think, a pretty surprising amount when you compare that to what Ant-Man made, which was, I think, less than this on a bigger budget. But, I don't know, I guess that's the star power of Benedict, Sherlock is a big fucking deal. Hamlet, was very...
I mean, are you saying that Paul Rudd isn't?
I think everyone loves Paul Rudd, but it's not like the level of idolatry towards Sherlock and Benedict is pretty insane. So I figure he brings all the girls to the yard, and many of the boys. Directed by Scott Derrickson, who made Sinister, and I think he's a horror dude generally.
He is.
He also wrote it alongside C. Robert Cargill, who helped him write Sinister. Also written by John Spates, who is considered Hollywood up-and-coming hot shit because I think his original script for Passengers was on the Hollywood blacklist for several years, and I think he helped out with Prometheus and a whole bunch of other stuff where he was brought in to help with things. So I guess he's up and coming. I don't really know.
He's written Prometheus, Passengers, and The Mummy. Let's just let that hang there for a second.
I'm just saying, at one point he was considered hot shit, and here he is now.
See, I really can't talk shit about Prometheus because David Lindelof co-wrote that, and I'm not allowed to be mean about him, even if his movie scripts aren't very good.
You kneel at the altar of Lindelof. There is a film called Doctor Strange that came out in 1978. I don't know much about it at all. I assume it was a very limited release in the vein of those old Captain America movies. I think I hear keystrokes of Ben looking it up right now. I'm not sure.
I am actually looking it up, but I'm not gonna say anything about it. I'm just
gonna stare
at the behind the scenes pictures of it because it's that kind of movie.
You know it. So as Ben alluded to, this was a pretty popular character in decades past, shall we say, the era of rock and roll and mind-altering substances. Similar to Silver Surfer, you know? There was talk of a Doctor Strange movie that goes all the way back to the mid-80s, not to diss that 1978 one in any way, but at one point Bob Gale of Back to the Future was writing a script for it for New World Pictures, who owned Marvel in the 80s. Stan Lee wrote a script alongside Alex Cox, who did Repo Man in the very late 80s. They almost made that film, but Warner Bros., who owned the company that were going to make it, weirdly enough, were in a bit of a dispute with Marvel at the time, so that didn't end up happening. David Goyer, Michael France, and Stephen Norrington were all attached to a Doctor Strange film in the 90s. Briefly gained some momentum at Columbia, but that was dropped. Dimension Films acquired the film in 2001, sold it to Miramax 2 months later. Why even bother buying it? Marvel and Paramount, that deal was struck in 2005. They got those rights back, but they didn't want to spend a ton of money on it. I think it was sort of a smaller project for them, in the vein of Ant-Man, I guess. Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer, who made the colossal juggernaut hit Sahara, took a stab at it in 2010 as part of this big thing to try and get their lesser-known characters off the ground. Marvel claim more directors offered to make this film than any of their other ones. I don't know if that's true or just something they said to try and spur on the guys they had going, but the likes of Mark Andrews, who was involved in The Iron Giant, and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and The Incredibles, Jonathan Levine, who did 50-50. All these people were involved. Ultimately, Scott Derrickson gets the gig. He wrote and illustrated a 12-page scene, had it storyboarded and produced, had an animatic made, all of this at his own expense. It was part of a 90-minute pitch, which was one of his 8 meetings he had before getting this gig, which is fucking insane to me. Marvel bought that scene from him, and it ended up becoming the scene where he's astrally fighting someone while Christine performs surgery on him, and he helps. It's
based on
it's on the Oath.
Strange the Oath as well, isn't it? Yeah, Brian K. Vaughan.
I'm sure you're going to bring that up. Derrickson wanted Cargill, who made Sinister with him. Marvel weren't so hot on that idea. They wanted it made pretty quickly. They wanted it to have its own writer, and so they didn't want Derrickson to split writing duties, and they weren't. I think politely they just didn't like Cargill as the solo writer, so they tapped John Spates. Spates had been after that gig for a long time because he was a big fan of the character. Marvel claimed to him that they were going to go and get a different writer, but he called them up and kept them on the phone for 3 hours and got the gig. So again, if you just are persistent, Marvel will hire you for things. Ask Anthony Mackie, I think. The three of them spent quite a long time discussing the direction of the film. They considered having Strange already be the Sorcerer Supreme at the beginning instead of doing an origin film, but they liked that origin, so they went with it. Everybody involved wanted Benedict Cumberbatch right from the start. I think fans immediately really took to that idea. But at the time, he was starring in Hamlet in London, so he couldn't do it. Joaquin Phoenix is another name that came up prominently, but, I mean, come on. Who seriously ever thought he would sign up to a multi-picture blockbuster deal? Nobody. Allegedly, Jared Leto, Ethan Hawke, Oscar Isaac, Ewan McGregor, Matthew McConaughey. All right. Jake Gyllenhaal, Colin Farrell, Ryan Gosling, and Keanu Reeves were all on a short list, but eventually Cumberbatch was available. So
some of those feel like very unruly actors for this franchise.
Keanu Reeves looking confused and casting spells.
Well, I can imagine, Keanu Reeves is someone, I couldn't imagine him as Doctor Strange, but I could see him in the MCU. I feel like he's someone who would fit in quite well. But I can't see a Ryan Gosling doing a superhero gig and not getting antsy to like move on and do something else.
It's similar vein as Joaquin Phoenix. You know, you just can't imagine. I mean, a lot of these are names that Marvel wrote down on a piece of paper as opposed to they actually had conversations with. Marvel basically wanted Cumberbatch so badly that they were like, okay, we'll film it when you're done with Hamlet. And that extra time let the writers do some rewrites and then flesh it out a bit more. A lot of the Guardians of the Galaxy crew worked on this film, and that meant they weren't available for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Which is why that movie shot in Atlanta rather than in the UK, like this one did.
Indeed. James Gunn gave some notes on the script. And finally, in this surprising amount of development stuff, Dan Harmon was brought in late to do some dialogue work and critique a lot of the sci-fi stuff. And he inadvertently revealed some of what he was doing at a Rick and Morty event. I think he had his laptop hooked up to a projector, and it was like one of the files on his desktop was something to do with Doctor Strange. So that was fun. Anyway, Ben, why don't you tell us all about everyone's favourite drug lord, Doctor Strange?
Okay. Doctor Strange is a comic book character created by two men. One of those men's name is Stan Lee.
Oh, weird.
The other one's isn't Jack Kirby.
No, shut up.
It's Steve Ditko created that. The co-creator of Spider-Man, probably most well known for. Yeah, so this is Stan Lee and Steve Ditko working on this. Debuted in Strange Tales number 110 in July 1963. This is one of those ones where if you've read Marvel Comics The Untold Story, it will say that this was one of the books that kind of took on a life on its own, much in the same way that Spider-Man did, and the Fantastic Four kind of became their own bigger than the comics entities. Doctor Strange was picked up by a lot of college students at the time who had a proclivity towards certain illegal substances that expanded their horizons.
Put on your blacklights and read some Doctor Strange, yo.
Yeah. If you go look up the artwork for Steve Ditko's Doctor Strange, because it is really fucking trippy. And they do a absolutely superb job in this movie of kind of like nailing that tone. We're not going to get into the controversiality behind Steve Ditko. He likes Ayn Rand.
I think it's Ayn Rand or something.
Ayn Rand?
Yeah.
Or whatever. I don't care if I mispronounce her.
I like Atlas Shrugged. We're going to leave that there.
Oh, God.
I don't agree with all of her opinions, but I like that book. Go on.
So Doctor Strange debuted around then. Never really, apart from like in that kind of drug culture, never really took off in any massive way. Never really joined the Avengers. I don't think he joined the Avengers until the 2010s when Bendis put him on the New Avengers team. So he's kind of hung around the sides of the Marvel Universe, always someone for Spider-Man to go talk to if the occult happened.
Yeah, he's always neutral or a consultant and everything. Like, he sits out Civil War, doesn't he? Because of reasons. Taste, apparently. Yeah,
like there are some solo series, but apart from like the Ditko stories, nothing that really kind of took off in any massive way. In the same way they did. And then the other kind of notable run on the character would definitely be, as I mentioned earlier, Brian K. Vaughan and Marcos Martin's Doctor Strange The Oath, which is just a fantastic little 5-issue miniseries which features Night Nurse in a very prominent role and is basically all about this waiting room where superheroes go to get fixed up after they've been in fights and such.
Yeah, that's a beautiful little story. Very nice art.
Yes, and then more recently, in the run-up to this movie, Jason Aaron and Chris Bachalo started their Doctor Strange series, which is also really fantastic to look at. But yeah, Doctor Strange is one of those weird ones where most of his culture kind of comes from the early days of that druggy culture, and then also kind of being he got adapted into the wider stream medium. So he kind of, people knew Doctor Strange, even if they didn't maybe know the character, but like the name is something that kind of hangs around, and a lot of people who read a comic probably have picked up Doctor Strange or have some awareness of him, which would explain why there were so many directors who wanted this role. Is because this isn't Iron Man. There were some stories that people knew, but he was never really anyone's favourite, whereas Doctor Strange, I feel, probably was quite a few people's favourite, even if he's never had that kind of the ongoing comic book presence that Spider-Man or even Iron Man has had a series basically ever since he debuted.
I mean, he's on the front cover of a Pink Floyd album, I'm pretty sure Doctor Strange is. So yeah, that's that's all very succinct. Well done. So let's get into this then. So we open the film with a rogue sorcerer named Caecilius, which I'm still hesitant about that pronunciation, but anyway, he is a rogue sorcerer. As I said, he has a little group of followers. They break into the library of Camartage, steal some pages from the Book of Cagliostro. There's going to be a lot of this terminology, so strap in. The Ancient One arrives to fight them, but they get away. So this was originally going to open with a little prologue at CERN, which is the European Centre for Nuclear Research, because they were doing some investigations into alternate dimensions and parallel universes for realsies, actual scientists doing this work. But for whatever reason, they didn't go that way. They didn't want to give you the excuse of like magic is science, science is magic, even though they basically do a speech saying that. So Caecilius is played by Mads Mikkelsen, who was considered for both Doctor Strange and Mordo before he ended up as Caecilius.
You're forgetting the other role he was considered for.
In a different Marvel movie.
Go
for it.
Malekith.
Oh, Malekith, of course. Slightly better, but along a similar theme.
Less makeup, more English.
Yes. He has admitted he struggled with how VFX heavy this film was. Didn't know where to stand, how to play the scenes. Ben showed me a wonderful video that shows that many of them didn't know that either. They incorporated some character traits from Mordo and the villain Kalu, I believe, because Caecilius is not a big deal whatsoever. Mordo is the nemesis of Strange and Dormammu, obviously, but yeah, they kind of elevated this character by giving him some stuff from other people.
Doctor Strange is not a character with a deep bench of villains to adapt, and so the fact that we get 3 of his would-be villains in this movie speaks volumes about what they're trying to do.
I mean, Mads Mikkelsen's a great actor, and like he's naturally suited for these kind of villainous characters, and I do like about him that he is a reasonable person. Like, he's not more ha-haing. He does have a set of goals and a justification, and we get all that later. It's just, I don't know. Like, Derrickson talked about how he acknowledged the problem with Marvel villains and all this, and he gave all this lip service to how he didn't want to do that, and then he fucking made another one of them where it's just like, there's not enough here, it's not very memorable, it's a waste of a really good actor. Sounds exactly like the other guy he was considered for, Malekith.
Caecilius is a weird one where he gets to monologue and like he almost feels like a proto version of Killmonger in some ways, where like the way he's talking, you sit there and go like, oh, he's probably got a good point, but it takes it from grounding it in the real world like Killmonger is, in terms of the racial divide between people and countries, and like what Wakanda isn't doing to help people around the world, and basically says, we can be immortal, we should be immortal, let's be immortal. It's like,
no one will ever die.
Yeah, it's like this weird thing where it's just like, this could have been something really interesting where he's trying to give human race something else. But instead he's just like, eternal life, that is what the human race is.
Like if he'd lost a loved one, and maybe that's why he went to Camartage in the first place, maybe to try and find a way to heal a dying wife or child, and something like that might have been good. But instead, you meet him fully formed, like there's no villain origin really. He's on his plan, and he achieves most of it until he doesn't, and it's just, his dialogue I think is well enough written most of the time, his monologue is well done, it's just there just is not space for him really in this film.
He of everyone in this movie gets hurt the most by it being an origin movie, because I think there is an interesting nugget here, I just think they go about it the wrong way.
Definitely. And that nugget is directly tied into the Ancient One, played by Tilda Swinton.
Controversially.
Yes, that is... Let's do it. They talked about how you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't with this character, because, you know, this is, in the comics, it's a Tibetan man. Disney, I suppose, want to avoid getting into the whole Tibet area. They didn't want to do a stereotypical Fu Manchu-style wise Asian master. So they were like, right, what if it's a woman? And they thought, right, if they're old, it's a dragon lady. If they're young, we're doing like a weird fetish thing. They didn't want to propagate or stereotype like Westerner coming to Asia to learn to be Asian. So they just landed on, let's have Tilda Swinton playing a somewhat androgynous female character. And it's like, it's really difficult because this is there's another character in this where they sidestep the problematic aspects of them really well. But it's really tricky, I think. And rightfully they got a lot of shit for it, because, you know, you're taking away one of the few Asian roles for an Asian actor, and you're giving it to some white woman. But this is something where I acknowledge what's good and bad about this. It doesn't break the film for me. If it's something that you find so offensive you don't want to watch it, fine. But it's a difficult industry, and this was a difficult character to adapt. So many comic book characters, if you're completely 100% faithful to them, are tricky. Like, most of the heroes are white. Most of the people of colour do not have great roles. And a lot of them start out very stereotypical. So
it's funny in how closely this almost lines up with the Mandarin problem that Iron Man 3 has. Mm-hmm. And you can see there's very similar lines, which is like the Ancient One and the Mandarin are two characters who really, in the 21st century, shouldn't be adapted in any way.
No.
And Iron Man 3 has a masterful take on what they want to do with that character and turns it into a meta-commentary on stuff. And you even get the actor who won an Oscar for playing Gandhi, despite the fact being white, to play... There's that kernel of meta-commentary in there of saying, like, we have an actor who has been hired to play someone who is not his race before to play someone who is not his race. And then this is... We don't want to get involved in the very fraught Tibet controversy. And we also don't want to go for the kind of... the pulp book interpretation of Asian culture that you found a lot back in the kind of like the early parts of the 20th century. And the easy way to do about that would be to just almost not have an Ancient One character. And it's that kind of thing where, because the character is so steeped in Asian mythos, you can't really get away from it, because so much of the power structure of Doctor Strange comes from Asian teachings, like with chakra and like all those kind of things, that no matter what they do, it is going to have the stench of white man comes and is better at this thing than anything else, which at least this is better at it than Iron Fist.
Tilda Swinton beat out Morgan Freeman, Ken Watanabe and Bill Nighy for this role. So that's 4 very different takes on this Asian character.
Ken Watanabe would be the person who probably would get the least shtick if they'd gone for him.
Yes. I think what they do with Wong, who we will come to, sort of eats the lunch of what they could have done there, but we'll see. I didn't know that the character was supposed to be Celtic until I was doing the research for this. She's meant to be an old Celtic mystic who is thousands of years old.
And she could have been dressed like a Celt.
I know, she could have. Tilda Swinton's obviously a fantastic actress. We'll get into this at the end, but I don't think it's not a bad performance. I think it's one of the better ones in the film. It's just it's also not. It's not going to be on her highlight reel, for her career. Maybe the fact that it was a controversial casting, but not the performance itself. But it's not bad. So they have this big fight in the mirror dimension. We get to see it for the first time. It's basically Inception on steroids, with streets folding into themselves, skylines ending up sideways, upside down, all this stuff. And we get to see the first example of how much money they threw at the CGI department for this. It's really beautiful. Like it's good stuff. So I can see why, like, if this is your jam, you're like, oh yeah, I'm loving this. It's just it's the connective tissue for me. I need something to happen between these really cool looking sequences.
Yeah, the movie tries its best, but it really does, especially the first third of this movie, like almost completely grinds to a halt when there isn't magic going on. Which is a real shame, because like as soon as this scene's over, we get a solid like 20 minutes worth of not magic.
Indeed we do, because meanwhile in New York, the arrogant neurosurgeon Stephen Strange severely injures his hands in a car accident, destroying his career, pushes away the friendship of his ex-lover Christina Palmer, spends most of his fortune on experimental treatments and radical therapies that don't work. So Benedict Cumberbatch is Stephen Strange. Despite all those people on that list, and despite Patrick Dempsey lobbying really hard to try and play him, nice try, bro, I sort of wish he wasn't doing an accent. It sounds like a really bad Hugh Laurie and House impression. Like there are certain turns of phrase in that accent that just do not ring true. Well, this doesn't really work because Hugh Laurie is so prominent with his very British accent, and then he did House. But I think because Sherlock is so ingrained, and you've heard Benedict Cumberbatch talk so much, hearing that American accent, which it's not awful, it's It's jarring.
No, but Hugh Laurie's American accent is almost perfect. The story behind Hugh Laurie getting the job is he recorded the video, sent them to the house producers, and then they turned to it and said, "We need good American actors like him."
Yes.
And they pointed at Hugh Laurie, and it's just like, oh wow, you. Whereas Benedict Cumberbatch, it's good in the same way that Brits kind of get a lot of the American accent, but because it's not there, it's got that almost uncanny valley feel to it, where it's like, ooh, almost, you're almost there, but not quite. And I'm terrible at critiquing accents, but I had the moment when I watched the movie last night where I was just like, ooh.
You just know when it hits the ear wrong. It's just something about it. And
I don't get it as much from his appearances in Thor Ragnarok, and I haven't had it from the trailer for Infinity War, so I think he is getting better at it.
I felt the same way about Martin Freeman. In his first appearance in Civil War, it bothered me, and then I thought he was fine in Black Panther. I don't know, maybe it's something he's getting better at.
Maybe he's just better at doing a Minnesotan accent.
Well, no, obviously in Fargo he's great, but, the whole thing of the arrogant white dude who pushes everyone away, it's very, very played out. We are seeing another Tony Stark-esque character here.
It's also a less interesting journey, though, because it's basically arrogant guy gets into accident and then continues to be arrogant.
His
afterwards.
Arrogance heals him, basically.
Yeah, that's the weird message of this, is he goes looking for the answer, and the only reason he gets any answer to anything is because he's so persistent, whereas Tony Stark comes back from his experience a changed person, a potentially better person. Obviously, Tony Stark's still flawed massively, but he stops selling guns, whereas Doctor Strange...
This gets to the point where his mentor has to say, "It's not about you," an hour and 10 minutes in, and then he's like, "Oh my god, it's not." There's just something about a lot of the way he's written that feels very first drafty or very generic to me. Him in the hospital, being able to cite all the things about a random song, and strutting down the corridor, and cover your watch because it's distracting me. I don't know, it just feels very my first screenplay type stuff to me. And I don't want to drag people's writing ability because these are actually professional writers, and who the fuck am I? But I don't know, just a lot of his dialogue when he's trying to be witty, I think, is not great. He's better in the angry and the dramatic moments than he is in the look at me be a quit machine.
That's my big issue with the movie, is that this is the Marvel movie where I think the humour doesn't hit. It's got maybe a 60-40 not hit rate for the actual jokes, maybe slightly more than that, but it's just I watch it and I'm just like, you could really revel in the darkness of some of this stuff. After he kills a guy, it's you could actually think about this for a second, and
they almost do. He's the first sort of superhero character in Marvel, at least, to kind of be I just killed someone, and actually treat that like a big deal.
It's this weird moment where we've had Civil War in Act 3 go really dark and kind of jettison the jokes, whereas in this one it feels like there's a really serious movie here that then they kind of go oh, but we're Marvel, so here's the cape to come do a little funny bit for 2 seconds.
Well, that's Benedict's fault, but we'll get into that. Rachel McAdams plays Christina Palmer, one of the several characters to be called Night Nurse, which is a name you may know if you watch the Netflix Marvel shows. Rosario Dawson is playing a different Night Nurse. She turned down Pepper Potts in Iron Man 1. But the growth of Marvel was such that she came a-calling back for them when it's now the hottest thing in the world. I feel there's a lot of actors like this where they turn down early Marvel films or superhero films generally. You wouldn't catch me in one of these. And now it's oh, this is now the biggest stuff on the planet. Please let me be in one.
Well, also, I think that she had to recover a little bit after doing True Detective Season 2.
Neither you nor Mike Thomas will bait me into this discussion. I like that they start from a place where they've already been lovers and they're instead trying... Their journey is one of moving to become friend. Well, she doesn't need to learn anything, but he is learning to be a good person to her, a good friend to her. And I know they have the little kiss near the end, but it doesn't strike me as a "and now they're together" moment. It is refreshing to see that it's not a "well, they won't" or anything like that. They've already had their thing.
It's people with chemistry who still get along well, but realise that they're not really made for each other. It's nice, and I know that they probably will have more of a romance arc if they ever make a second one of these movies. But in this movie, it does feel refreshing because it's almost closer to the relationship that Pepper and Tony had in Iron Man 1, except without the kind of end to the movie. stuck on there.
Yeah, I mean, where that's like a whole, My Girl Friday, like the secretary, the boss type thing. This is more of a
colleagues.
Yeah,
equals.
Yes, indeed. She's perfectly fine. She just has to fuck off for about an hour. So I don't think she has enough scenes. Personally, maybe she'll get more when they eventually do a sequel. But she ties him to the real world. She's one of the few characters. There's not many characters in this movie. When I was sitting down doing the cast list, I was like, oh, there you go. So yeah, she's really just there to be the person to bring him back into the real world, as it were, after Kamata. Not that it's not the real world, but
Who else is just there, Matt? In all of these scenes set in the hospital, who else is literally just there?
Two people. Michael Stuhlbarg as Nicodemus West, and also Amy Landecker.
Her scenes got cut, but yes, she is there.
She's not all of them. She's there. She just, I don't think, has a speaking role at any point.
No, she doesn't. But but Michael Stuhlbarg in this role is it's fucking bizarre. Like, having just come through Oscar season, where he's in The Post, he's in Shape of Water, and he's in Call Me by Your Name, and he's the best fucking thing or one of the best fucking things in Call Me by Your Name. To come and watch this movie where he has a comedic beat where he goes back to a vending machine because 2 ghosts have flown through it and he's going to get some more snacks is genuinely mind-boggling.
Yeah, and being basically told you're an idiot, and then later on you do this. And it's like, oh, great. It would have been great if he did any acting in between this.
Like, Michael Stuhlbarg is one of the best character actors that we have going right now.
Fargo, man. Men in Black 3, man.
It's like Simple Man is just absolutely is outstanding, and it's like he's absolutely fantastic in that. Like, he also got very little to do in Boardwalk Empire, but whenever he was on screen in Boardwalk Empire, he was magnetic and amazing, and this movie just completely wastes him, and I am so sad that they literally do nothing with him, and he has been kept from being in another Marvel movie where he might actually have something to do.
Yeah. And we'll put him on the list of wasted actors in Marvel films.
I mean, I can't remember what I said to you. I was just like, he would make a really good Reed Richards.
Oh yeah, he would.
In a Fantastic Four movie, like a really good Reed Richards, and we've used him here.
Yes, here he is. Nicodemus West. What a name for an unimportant character. We get this fun little nod to the history of the character when Strange is getting ready before his car crash. We get some Pink Floyd playing. He selects watches from a big drawer of watches. He selects one that's the same brand that Tony wears in Iron Man 2. Big parallels with those characters. I'm actually looking forward to seeing them interact in Infinity War, weirdly enough. Just before the car crash, he is taking a phone call about all these potential patients that people were so desperate to say were... Well, they talk about some, like, an Air Force person in experimental armour who's got spinal problems. It's like, wait, what just came out? Civil War? What happened to Rhodey? He got paralysed. And as adamant as fans may be that this is Rhodey, it's definitely not, because they've said it's not, and they've said that this scene is supposed to take place like a year before Civil War. So maybe it's the guy that survived his test flight in Iron Man 2 that just...
Well, even that's like 6 years beforehand, so it's just
I don't know. But
it's this weird moment where it's just like, you've got 2 moments in this franchise where you could have a character be related to this scene, and instead
it's neither.
It's neither, and it's this really weird moment where, like, you kind of go like, oh, Easter egg, and it's almost like they've just kind of go like, we could really piss the fans off by saying it's not an Easter egg.
Yeah. And then the other one is potentially the original Miss America, but fuck the original Miss America, because America Chavez is the future, people. That car crash is pretty horrific. All the shots of his very injured hands are very, very brutal. Fun fact, his handwriting when he's trying to get the use of his hands back still better than mine, and I haven't had a car crash. Not joking there at all.
It's just, I've seen your handwriting, so...
Yeah, it's true. Oh, I hated our job that we had to write by hand so much. The line where, like, you know, Christina's like, oh, no one could have done better, and he's like, I could have. I was like, oh...
Yes, work on your own hands. That scene is like irony, is like just slathered on, and I'm still. And at the end of this, I'm sat here going like, can we go to Asia now and you can learn magic?
well, he's injured within 10 minutes, and within 10 minutes, he's in Kamar-Taj. 10 minutes after that, he's in Kamar-Taj. So, yeah, Strange learns of this person, Jonathan Pangborn, after being a complete dick to his physiotherapist, by the way, who was a paraplegic who regained full use of his legs. He seeks him out, finds him playing basketball, and he is directed to Kamar-Taj in Nepal. After he is mugged during his long search, he is taken in by Carl Mordo and meets the Ancient One, who eventually agrees to train him in the art of sorcery, after also proving to him that magic's real. Benjamin Bratt as Jonathan Pangborn, which is such an odd name that it's so memorable, and they kind of set this character up to be a big deal, and he's obviously not going to be. But Benjamin Bratt is one of those actors who I hear the name, but I just could not summon up a role that is his. I know he's in Law and Order, but it's like it's just one of those actor names that you hear and you're like, oh yeah, him, but you don't really know his work. You probably do, but
no. This movie feels like we've got 10 spaces in the credits, and so Benjamin Bratt and Michael Stuhlbarg are names we know, so they're going to get single card credits in the post-credit scene. It's just like, what? What did they do? How much did they get for this role? What is happening? Marvel, are you literally just throwing money at these people to have them in your movie? Like, yes. Again, I said to you last night, this movie probably has the best cast of any origin movie in the Marvel franchise, and it wastes. No, it doesn't waste. It just
underuses them to a man.
Yeah, almost every one of them, unless you are Benedict Cumberbatch, you are underused, and that makes sense because it's an origin movie. But it's just you have so many actors here that could be leads in your movies, and for a lot of them, and they're limited to 2 or 3 scenes each.
Mm-hmm.
It's astounding.
Yes. Chiwetel Ejiofor is here as Carl Mordo. Gary Oldman was considered for this role. That would have been weird. He's a wonderful actor, and he's so close to being really good in this, I think, because he's a legitimate black belt in martial arts, so he's really authentic in those training scenes. He's got that wonderful voice and way he carries himself. He's obviously phenomenal at playing these sort of devout characters. We'll talk about where it ends up, but I think he's just the wrong side of great,
Yeah, I can see every single thing they do in this movie with him. I can see them coming in with this really great idea that they're going to give a character who isn't the main character a multiple movie arc, and it's going to really pay off in the second or third time that he shows up in a movie. But because you're doing an origin movie, there isn't enough time to set up the arc in this movie, and I appreciate that we're going to go into a second movie and he's probably going to feature quite heavily into it, and we're going to understand where he's coming from, but Doctor Strange needs to have his full arc, and they don't come close to satisfyingly complete it. And I love Ejiofor. He's fantastic in Serenity, he's fantastic in 12 Years a Slave. There's so many different things that I've seen him in that it just he elevates it, and then this movie he doesn't, not for lack of trying on his part, because he's great. But
he's one of the stronger people in it, but no one in it is word of mouth worthy from this.
Yeah, I don't think anyone gets to be bigger than the role.
Yeah. So the little switch they do, because Strange is brought into this little place, and he sees the wise old Asian man drinking tea, and he assumes that's the Ancient One, and then Tilda Swinton is like, hey, and that would have been a really fun little switch if not for the fact that you saw her in the opening scene, and obviously, I mean, I can tolerate when who it is based on the cast, as long as the film doesn't give it away, but the film does give it away, so you blow your little fun reveal of, oh no, it's her. And we get this magical mystery tour sequence, as it's called, done by the same VFX team that did Ant-Man's Quantum Realm sequence, and you can tell Dan Harmon's contributions here are abundant. It looks like Rick and Morty made with more money. Some of the stuff with hands growing into hands and him falling into his own eye and all of that fun stuff. Again,
it looks so good.
Yeah, again, it's really great to look at, but I can't really say more than that. It's really great to look at, and the things that have happened since the last thing that was really good to look at aren't quite good enough. It's gorgeous, and I can't even fathom how much money they spent on it.
A lot.
So, Doctor Strange, a man of medicine, is now convinced that magic is real. so much so that he stays at Cumberbatch after some convincing, and after several months of study, aided by rapid consumption of books he steals from the library and a photographic memory, he begins to show some progress. But when he breaks into the library and looks into this book of Cagliostro and finds the Eye of Agamotto, he starts to fuck around with time. He makes an apple, decay and grow back and all that. And he's told off and then info dumped because of this. So, I love me a good training sequence, and everyone else does, and because when they were doing testing of this film, test screenings, the training stuff went well, so they added a lot more of it in reshoots. That's all good fun. And if you look at the blossoms on the tree, you can see that, several months have passed. And I don't give a shit if he's got a photographic memory. In real film time, he goes from not being able to do anything to being able to hold off Caecilius and his people and go on to fight Dormammu in about 10-15 minutes. And it's I appreciate you not getting bogged down in a heavy scene, but in some ways I almost wish it said 5 years later or something like that.
Yeah. He has the sling ring.
Yeah.
He can't use the sling ring. He gets sent to Everest. He comes back from Everest, and then all of a sudden he's really competent.
Yes.
It genuinely happens in the space of that one scene, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do, because I think the best stretch of the movie comes after the training sequence, but this isn't like in Iron Man, where that cave sequence isn't super long, but we get a lot of setup that Tony Stark knows what to do with these kind of things, so we understand he's competent. But here it's there's no effort to say that the skills he has as a doctor are transferable to this. They just kind of go oh, he's a genius because he's a genius. And
and when he's asking about how he would ever learn to do this, and she says, how did you learn to repair a spine or repair a part of the body? And they're equating it to years of study, and it's I could understand it if they were yes, you're really good at the theory side of this, you're able to retain this knowledge really well, but it's still hard as fuck. So I would have liked if they balanced these two, because you get and you get the stuff where it's how were you able to do this? He is the wonderful chosen one, of course. I don't think it would have made him look any less impressive if he got to be a really high level in a few years rather than a few months. And it would also fix the stuff they did with the timeline where they're no, this is ages ago, but it's 2016, the same year as Civil War.
Yeah, it's just always one of those things where it's I understand the reasons behind doing it, but this movie has a very weird relationship to time, in that the first 20-30 minutes of this movie are boom, 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 and it's this took place over an amount of time that isn't entirely clear. And now we're into the part of the movie which is pretty much from the word go, just in chronological order, straight through, no cutaways, no nothing, no time jumps or anything. We literally just follow a sequence of events now from this point.
Yes.
And it's this really weird jump, and I think the movie's a lot stronger when it does this part where it's this is 12 hours in the life of these characters, but we come out of it kind of going how long have we actually spent watching this growth happen?
Sling Ring is a very dorky name, by the way. I just want to say that. I don't care if it's from a comic. If it isn't, that's worse. In fact, Nico Minoru's mother is one of the characters who is training alongside Strange, which is fun. I think the little scene where Master Hamir, who is shown to have an amputated hand, is able to do spells, because Strange complains his hands are holding him back, and then to have him do that, I think that was a nice little moment that they found some time for. More importantly, though, Benedict Wong as Wong. This is an example of them sidestepping a problematic character who is, a white man's manservant who wears robes and brings tea constantly, and instead, this dude, while he probably is a capable martial artist, they never show him doing martial arts, and he is more of just a stern drill sergeant type character, and I think that's a really smart way to play it. He might be my favourite person in this movie. I'm not going to try and push for him to get outstanding by any means, but good for him that he's going to be in Infinity War. I think he has some nice little beats.
I want to ask, the Beyonce joke.
Yes, I was just about to say. Benedict Cumberbatch saying Drake, Adele and Beyonce are among the cringiest things I've ever heard. He just doesn't sound right saying Drake. Yeah, I guess you're more talking about that he is later listening to Single Ladies.
I like that bit.
I do as well. I just don't like Benedict deadpanning all these artists. It's
come on, Beyonce. That. Yeah, it's come on, Beyonce, let's do this or whatever. It's okay. But then the cut to Benedict Wong going and be like, who? And then actually listen to Single Ladies, and it's like, did he just decide to start listening to Beyonce because he mentioned him, or was he just fucking with Doctor Strange? Like, both of those interpretations are fantastic.
Yes.
But the way that they bring up Beyonce is just weird and really cringy, as you say.
Yeah,
like,
it seems very my first script. It seems very low-hanging fruit in a bad... I don't know. It's not great. Is this potentially one of the first times a film has featured two people called Benedict in it?
Almost definitely.
Yes, it's not that common a name. The info dump stuff, I think, is as info dumps go, not bad. Like the diagram of the Earth and the explanation of the sanctums and all that. It's not boring. It's not just washing over you and meaning nothing. I think it's decently done. I like the time control sequence with the apple. You know, like the apple, of course, representing forbidden knowledge, forbidden fruit, all that. And it's like a cool visual effect. But again, I don't like how easily that comes to him. They're like, how did you do this? He's like, I read the book and I did the things it said. And it's like, oh. But it makes it seem like I could do it. And I know I couldn't, obviously. But it's just, I don't know. They needed to do something where, like, you know, oh, the eye opens for you.
I mean, especially at the end where they reveal what the eye is. We've had a build-up to this. And... okay, fine. If that's where we want to go, that's fine, but...
Strange can control an Infinity Stone, the Time Stone. Potentially the most important one, if the rumours about Avengers 4 are true. Caecilius uses these stolen pages he grabbed at the beginning. Hey, remember Caecilius? To borrow power from the evil entity Dormammu, who lives in the Dark Dimension, who Doctor Strange was warned about. He uses this power to attack the New York Sanctum Sanctorum. He attacks London first, and then he goes after New York.
He blows London up.
He does. Insensitive. Strange ends up in the New York one, trapped, away from Wong, away from Mordo, away from the Ancient One, against these three experienced sorcerers, one of them being Caecilius, all with borrowing power from Dormammu, and he manages to hold them off long enough, or he beats them, really, and he captures Caecilius temporarily.
I appreciate that he wins through the environment, though.
Yes,
not through any particular skill.
He takes advantage of weird artifacts and he like outsmarts them, and he does things that aren't magic, and I guess that's what threw them off, basically. But again, he goes from the only one in his class who can't make a sling ring portal to fighting off three sorcerers at once. And it's just, like you said, the way he does it is fine. Like, I like the little like scene-changing windows and like the binding armor that he uses on Caecilius. That's fun stuff. It's just
like as I said before, like I think this stretch of the movie is the most confident, but that's just because it is beat. Like I don't like how they got to the point where he's all competent, but like when he gets to be competent and it's just showing off the special effects and showing off just the weird ways that magic works in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like I really do appreciate that stuff.
I think it's all a very strong proof of concept. Like this is where they need to be going, like weird shit, countless weird artifacts and stuff like that. And I can see why they considered making him already the Sorcerer Supreme, because I feel while there's a debate about whether a sequel to this is necessary or not, I am... You know, this is the kind of stuff I like, and having a justification for why he's able to do a lot of it would be good. But
seeing these guys, like the opening scene of the movie is these guys attacking the Sanctum Sanctorum, and he just fends them off. Like, you just move this scene up in the movie, and then you get more time to flesh out the villains, and you don't have to.
And you could even do a flashback to the car crash if you're so intent on doing it. I think Derrickson is pretty obsessed with the villain Nightmare, who I don't know anything about, but I'm assuming he is to do with dreams. You could have him, have the nightmare about his car crash. I don't know. We get the Cloak of Levitation here. Benedict Cumberbatch suggested the thing where it's like wiping his tears away from his face and like annoying him, and that it like sort of moves on its own. Has a very the Magic Carpet and Aladdin vibe to it, I think.
Yes.
He does the little Sherlock collar pop as well. It's the cloak is fun, I think.
I think parts of the cloak are fun.
Yes.
The cloak being hyper competent, I appreciate. The cloak reading his emotions and being caring, I'm not too sold on. Like, I like the bit where like the cloak's just like, no, get this thing rather than the
dragging him away. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. And he's like desperately trying to drag it. Kind of like the cloak like smothering a guy almost to death as well.
Yes. Yeah. Again, the cloak as competent, I appreciate. The cloak when it's like stroking his face, I'm just like, okay, fine.
We've got some fun Marvel stuff here. I think Moon Knight's mask is somewhere in the Sanctum. A prop master made the ebony blade, which belongs to Black Knight, I would assume.
Black Knight.
That was made for the film, but it isn't actually here. And the New York Master who is killed is Jericho Drum's brother. Jericho Drum, of course, inherits the title of Sorcerer Supreme at one point. I guess he has to give it back, because Doctor Strange must always be the Sorcerer Supreme. But yeah, that's a nice little tie in there. It's a fun scene. It's just, it's rife with all the problems we've mentioned. Caecilius, ends up escaping, and the Ancient One and Mordo arrive, and we go back to the mirror dimension, and we have another one of these scenes. Caecilius manages to kill the Ancient One, shockingly. But he has at this point revealed that she draws power from this dark dimension, which is exactly what he is being condemned for doing. Calls her a hypocrite, all this. Mordo makes note of it. That will be important later. Strange rushes her to a hospital in a foolish attempt to save her life. She falls stupid far to the ground and goes through glass and stuff. And he speaks to her in the astral plane as she's dying and all this stuff.
I did think for a second, is the theme of Phase 3 going to be people falling from stupid heights and then very realistic hitting the ground?
Yes.
Because this is the second movie we've had. I think there is one in Guardians 2 as well. Is someone falling from a great height, although admittedly not in a realistic way.
No. I think this mirror dimension one, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. But there's so much going on, you can't focus on any of it. At least that's how it is for me. I don't know. I mean, maybe there are people that are sitting there watching this frame by frame over and over and over again who love it. But for like 3 times I've seen this now, weirdly. I'm able to acknowledge that it's beautiful, but I'm just being bombarded with stuff and I can't really key in on anything.
It is Inception on crack.
Yeah, like if the first one is Inception on steroids, this is Inception on crack. Right? Yeah,
this is them doing like, what if Inception was only Escher paintings?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a bit too much. There's not enough restraint, I think, is the problem there. If this stuff is your bag, then you're having a great time. But I think it's just a little smidge too much here.
I always get sucked into this one because it's just like, it's so much fun to look at. But it is kind of like highly disposable. There's no emotional stakes to what they're doing. And I'm always taken out with the fact that like they keep on casting the portals to get away. And I'm just like, why are you doing it like 40 feet away from you? Like we've seen at other points in the movie that you can do it within about like 3 feet. You're doing it so far away, and you have to run like a long distance. And
the shot of him running directly at camera doing the sling ring thing, super goofy. I like when they get onto like the floating platform and it's the actual fight. I like that, but yeah, when they're just constantly jumping between things, it's a bit much. The astral plane fight is okay. This is the big scene that Derrickson created to get the film. I don't quite get the logic of him killing a person via defibrillation and like he's fine, but it kills the other. I don't know, but it's okay. It's okay to me.
Rachel McAdams gets to scream,
yes,
and react
for realsies, because that mop fell on the floor by accident and she jumped out of her skin. Yeah,
Rachel McAdams.
She takes to it very like, okay, when he's like floating in the air in front of her. Sorry.
I do appreciate how game Rachel McAdams is. I saw her in Game Night the other week, and I was just like, you need to be in more. And then I watched Doctor Strange, and I was like, you need to be used well in more things.
Yes. While I'm not personally like amazed by this big astral plane fight, I do like when he's having the conversation with the Ancient One, and you see this lightning bolt very slowly making its way down the sky, and just to make clear what is happening. I think I like it. There's nothing about this film, any part of it, where I'm like mega enthusiastic or super against anything.
This conversation is like what makes me feel that Tilda Swinton's paycheck was probably well deserved, because I do think it's a nice conversation about someone understanding that this is the moment that she's going to die, and is kind of like accepting of it. And yeah, like it's the weird thing where it's just like, I've heard this conversation and by so many different things of like someone who can tell when she's going to die being accepting, but it's well done here, even if the fact it's well done is because you've got an actress who doesn't need to be delivering this kind of dialogue in front of a backdrop of like CGI-ness that just kind of elevates it that little bit. It's a good conflux of things where like this scene is better than it needs to be, but it also maybe shouldn't exist because it's been done before.
There's also that super on the nose moment where after she says, because it's not about you, the camera like pans around to the other side. It's like, see, his perspective has shifted.
There's a really odd cut in this bit where Doctor Strange says something and it cuts to her face for 2 seconds and it cuts back to him. And I'm just like, what on earth happened there?
Did he make a funny face?
I don't know. It might be the moment she dies or like I can't remember what it is, but I just sat there going like, that's such a weird cut. And it's made it through to the final version of the film. And I don't understand why anything.
Also, like, I'm sorry, but that hospital have to file a death certificate for this unnamed woman who has no identity whatsoever that Strange brought in off the street, and I just can't imagine the paperwork involved there. Strange and Mordo arrive at the Hong Kong sanctum just a little bit too late because Caecilius and company have super fucked up Hong Kong. But so Strange has to use the Eye of Agamotto again, rewinds time. They're fighting, he realises he can't win this way, so he figures out what he has to do, and that's go into the Dark Dimension and trap Dormammu in an infinite time loop until he gives up. I do want to talk about that, but the Battle of Hong Kong, the time reversal stuff, I think it's fun, you know, like, fighting backwards or fighting amidst things going backwards. It's a thing you've seen a lot over the years in sci-fi, but you know, if you're going to have the Eye of Agamotto and you've got to keep drilling this idea of, hey, he can do stuff with time, guys, then it makes sense to me.
Yeah, visually it's fantastic. It's just something that we're going to keep on saying from this. Like, visually, this movie, it's very well done, and I like the kind of the effect that happens when they break free of the time travel stuff, like the
like
weird,
tearing their way out of it, and the shuddering,
and the fact that they get like trapped in walls and trapped in like fish tanks and stuff like that. And it's not original, but it's a well done version of it, which is again like so much of this movie is like something you've seen before, but it's probably done more competently than it's done in other places.
Yeah.
If only because they're just throwing so much money at this thing.
An obscene amount. So my favourite scene in the goddamn movie, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. We have Benedict Cumberbatch playing Dormammu at his own suggestion, because he just can't get enough of voicing two people in one movie. I love it. I think it's gorgeous. For me, this is the visually coolest thing, and like the way the Dark Dimension looks, like the atoms in the air, and like the colours, the purples and greens. I think it's gorgeous. Dormammu's got a really weird look. It's very different than how he looks in the comics. I believe he's mostly just like a giant fire demon a lot of the time. I think it's really clever. Like
this is so good.
Yeah, like because. This is the thing with this character, because we have so many punchy, stabby, fighty enemies, and Strange deals in not that at all. Like, he deals with things that are beyond comprehension. Like, you have a big incoming villain soon in Thanos, who is, like, you know, the most unfuck-withable physical force. And then Dormammu's just... he's something else, so that Strange beats him this way, I think, just makes complete and total sense.
Yeah, it's so nice after having... This is the 5th origin movie that we've had in the franchise so far, and it's the only one that doesn't come down to two people throwing punches at each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's so refreshing. Like it's a different way of taking it down, and it looks really good. It's structured really well. It's in keeping with everything the movie's been doing so far. It basically proves, like, yes, we've got the big CGI spectacle going on in the final act, but that you don't need to have... And even we're getting down to the level of, like, Benedict Cumberbatch is literally playing both characters, so we're still doing the mirror image version of them fighting against each other. Yes. But again,
Scott Derrickson must have been so like fake deep as a teenager. All the stuff he thinks is poignant. Yeah, and like, I really like the first time that time rewinds, and Dormammu says the same thing, and then is like, wait, what? And like looks around a bit, and all the like super fucked up ways he murders him, and then he just... And I think my favourite edit is the one where like Strange dies off to the right of the screen and then floats down from the top or something. It's just really well done. Logic would dictate Dormammu should just torture him rather than murder him repeatedly, but hey, I guess he could still make time rewind if he wanted. Really, really, really well done. We then get the little nod to the mindless ones, because when he relents, he takes Caecilius and co away, and they transform into what sure as hell look like the mindless ones, which is Dormammu's little army of followers. Yeah, he trolls Dormammu into giving up forever, allegedly. We'll see if that holds. Yeah, and off they go. Strange returns the eye to Kamar-Taj, takes up residence in the New York Sanctum. It becomes its new guardian at the Ancient One's suggestion before she died. I'm missing something out, but it's on purpose, because we'll just talk about it in one go. In a little mid-credit scene, we get Thor talking to Doctor Strange about Loki and Odin. This scene was, of course, filmed by Taika Waititi before they got rid of all the sets for this film. It's fun. Like, it's a fun little thing, you know, like a refilling thing of beer and like a more confident Strange, and it will play out into a pretty fun non sequitur in Thor Ragnarok, which we'll talk about vaguely soon. They kind of end with him just sort of walking into the New York Sanctum. Like, it was a shot they closed every trailer with, I think, of him walking up those stairs with the cloak on and everything. It's fun. It's
weird in that it's more explicit than when they did it in Ant-Man, but like, but then we're also more than a year away from the movie that this scene is taken from. So,
yeah.
But again, it's like, it's that similar thing where the comedy in this scene feels so much more confident than the comedy in the rest of the movie.
Well, different director.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's Taika Waititi versus Scott Derrickson, the guy who's known for horror movies, versus the guy that's known for his comedy movies. And
you're saying a hack versus an artist. Gotcha. Cool. No diss is intended to the horror genre. Yeah, there's not really much more to say about that. So let's talk about Mordo. He gets so disillusioned with what has happened with the Ancient One, the reveal that she has been a hypocrite, that she has been drawing her immortality from an evil place, that she doesn't scold Strange for perverting the laws of nature by fucking with time and all this. So he leaves after this big fight. And then in the end credits scene, we see him wearing a hoodie to show that he's evil. It's super hacky, Scott Derrickson. He shows up and he confronts Jonathan Pangborn, who was mentioned earlier in the film. A key point of this was that he got the power needed to heal his legs, and then he was like, cool, I'm out, instead of continuing and becoming a noble champion. So Mordo shows up and basically does a little rant about sorcerers fuck with the natural order of things. I'm going to kill all the sorcerers, and then presumably myself, if I'm not going to be a hypocrite. So yeah, he steals Pangborn's power and renders him a paraplegic again, and says villainous things. While the hoodie thing is super hacky, as I said, I actually think this is a pretty logical journey. Like, he doesn't do an about-face. Like, this is true to the character presented, that he is strictly to the doctrine of what is taught, and he has been lied to by his mentor, and he doesn't think that messing with time is something that one should do. And it all links into what he says. I think we could have had some more scenes for him to make this a more eloquent journey, but I don't think it's a sudden, and now he's evil, by any means. And if we get him basically playing the operative in the second movie, then I'm all for it. Because, you know, that character is all like, you know, the things I do are evil, but necessary. And it seems like that's kind of what they're tapping into at the end here, to me.
Yeah, as I said earlier, like, this is, even though I don't think Scott Derrickson, like, manages to commit fully with Caecilius in terms of, like, what he wants to do, I can see everywhere he's trying with it. He gets to give them the speech that makes him sympathetic with Caecilius, and then we get the character he's obviously developing to be a villain down the line. I think it's rushed because I think he doesn't have enough scenes, but I do appreciate that we are going to go into Doctor Strange 2, and we're going to know the motivation entirely behind this, and we're not going to have setup and have all that stuff. We're just going to hit the ground running and presumably get this conflict playing out.
Well, this is the thing. I understand why you do the Thor one in the middle, because it's like cross-promotional, like, isn't this fun? I kind of think it would have been better to switch these around, because there may be people that don't know this happened. Because I watched this for the first time in the cinema, obviously, but the second time I saw it, it was like a big group of people. We had a projector, we watched outside. Pretty cool way to see it, actually. And they turned the film off after the Thor one, because they were like, oh, that's it. And I was like, oh, guys, but this happens, and they didn't give a shit. But, if he is going to be the main villain in the next movie, I wonder if maybe they need to repeat this scene to start the next one or something.
I mean, they probably will, Mark. Like, the fact that we end this movie and we get it with literally a scene from Thor, and Ant-Man ends with literally a scene from Civil War. I can only imagine that this will happen again at some point in hypothetical Doctor Strange 2, because they haven't announced one yet.
I feel they will. I think this did shockingly well, and they've got Benedict under contract, and it's surprisingly popular, and now he's capable. I think you have more you can do. If they've got 20 unannounced films, this has got to be one of them.
I think at this point, we're basically waiting for Comic-Con to come around and for them to basically say, here's our slate. Infinity War's going to come out. We might get the title for the fourth Avengers movie, and then in the summer they'll be like, okay, here's the next 9
Yeah, I feel they're waiting on this next film to come out so that they can announce some shit, because they haven't announced anything in a while. So.
Yeah, like we know Spider-Man 2 is coming, we know Guardians 3 is coming, but that's all we know of the post Avengers 4 world.
Okay. So, some miscellaneous stuff. In a cameo, Stan Lee is a bus passenger reading Aldous Huxley. I think James Gunn directed this, because he filmed a whole bunch of his cameos, didn't he, at one time?
Yeah, I think this was the first one, and he did Black Panther, this, and Avengers, possibly both Avengers movies, and Spider-Man as well. Like, yeah, they're basically every movie that came out after this one, they filmed the cameo.
I said Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I already talked about Amy Landocker, so I guess I'm done with cameos, really. They had an astrophysicist called Adam Frank consult heavily on the science of this, the different viewpoints the characters should have, all that. I like it when people do this kind of research. Like, go consult scientists more, people. Stark Tower is visible in the New York skyline at various points in the movie. We've kind of said everything there is to say about it, so we're going to close this one down pretty quickly. Villain Watch seems almost unnecessary. We've said it. I don't think this is like an all-time worst one, but it's definitely on the lower end of the spectrum in that they never get enough time, and this is no different. Like, Caecilius has a set of tenets that aren't uninteresting, but there's no time for him. So
I do think he is better than the Ironmonger. I think he's better than Red Skull, and I
know some people that really love Red Skull. I was in a comic book shop a couple of weeks ago, and one of the members of staff was talking to a customer, and they were talking about Black Panther, and like, yeah, it's the best villain since Red Skull. I was like, what? I'm gonna need you to explain every part of that, please.
Yeah, I mean, like, Red Skull's good and fine. Like, Red Skull's on the upper... Like, if we're doing the 5 origin movie villain, or the 6 origin movie villains, he's in the top... Well, no, he's in the bottom 3, because there's 6 now. He would have been, like, right in the middle before Black Panther came out, but Killmonger's kind of dropped everyone down, apart from Loki. But yeah, like, this movie's, like, it's 3 or 4 of those. It's definitely better than Ironmonger. It's definitely better than Yellow Jacket, so...
I think it doesn't help that this isn't a banner character in the comics, either. That it's... You knew it wasn't anyone that important, sort of going into it. And I think Dormammu is well executed, but you see him for, like, 2 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, and even then that ties more into Act 3, and that is good Act 3.
Yes, definitely. I would argue the best act of the film. But...
Yeah, like, again, like, when the movie just becomes, hey, look at the wacky CGI fun time, but also base it in intelligently structured plot resolution, it really does come full circle. And I can see someone coming out this movie and basically being like, feeling that they had a better time than they did, because by the end of this movie I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I'm ready for more Doctor Strange, forgetting the beginning of the movie and how when it's not magic it's kind of a little bit dull.
Well, they're done with that now. He's definitively a magical man. We'll see what happens to him in Infinity War and possibly beyond. So, outstanding performances. I think we've made this pretty clear. No one's getting it for this. They have, as you said, a great cast. Everyone's giving an adequate performance, but nobody's doing anything noteworthy. No one's doing anything that will be like, oh man, remember this in Doctor Strange? Yeah, I think that's pretty easy. That gives us 3 spare picks to play with going forward. We had 2.
Oh my god.
And we will now have 3. So we'll see what happens there.
I do want to say one thing, which will be my friend will kill me if I don't give this a shout out. Michael Giacchino's score for this movie. It's his first Marvel movie. He's not for someone as high profile as him. I don't think we're getting to the level of like Captain America or the Avengers theme, but like the music for this movie does set the tone really, really well. And Michael Giacchino has already kind of established himself as probably the best composer Marvel have hired, because his Spider-Man Homecoming music is also really good.
We don't talk about the music enough, I don't think. I think because a lot of the early ones are like not phenomenal, but we've hit a pretty good run of great scores here. Like the Ant-Man music is surprisingly good. Yeah. Civil War score is pretty great. Like, yeah. Okay, so next time we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Everyone should just be crazy excited because Baby Groot has got a little thing and he's not going to press this button, but he wants to press it because he's... I really
fucking love that trailer. I fucking love that trailer.
I wish I didn't see it 400 times before I saw the movie. Yes, Guardians 2. I'm very intrigued to see what I think about it because I've not seen it since I saw it for the first time.
Neither have I. Like, this will be my second watch, and
I'm not willing to give opinions about it yet because I don't know where I'll land on it after a rewatch. So yeah, that will happen.
I want to reiterate, like I like Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
like quite a bit, but I feel like we were definitely kind of like, oh, this is so dull. Like, I like Doctor Strange. I think it's fantastically well made, if a little dead inside.
It's what I said at the beginning. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't get how anyone can be like, this is the 5th best Marvel movie or anything. This is middle of the pack. This is better than all the bad ones, but it doesn't have anything about it that, you know, we're going to be doing a 10-year retrospective episode and like talking about some of our favourite moments and like, you know, the heights of this franchise, the many franchises. There's nothing in this that I'm going to talk about from that. Maybe Dormammu I've come to bargain, but it's just lacking, I think. It's got some phenomenally cool visual scenes, but that's not quite enough. Like,
yeah, I mean, depending on
you won't have a bad time, you won't be bored. It's just not something that I would wax lyrical about and write essays about, like I might some of them.
It's this weird moment where I think Phase 3 is the strongest phase of the MCU.
Undoubtedly.
And Doctor Strange is the weakest movie.
And I think that's a sheer compliment.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, Doctor Strange being the worst... this isn't Incredible Hulk is the worst movie in Phase 1 or Thor the Dark World being the worst movie in Phase 2. Like, those are not very good. No. Doctor Strange being the worst movie in Phase 3, you still come away thinking, like, damn, that is not a bad thing.
No, not at all. Well, that's our Doctor Strange discussion. You were right to add that in because I feel, despite what I said at the beginning, we did spend quite a while seemingly dissing that. But next time around, as I said, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, very interested to see how we both feel about that on a second viewing. So yeah,
all of the next 3 episodes will be second viewings.
Same. I don't know why I haven't rewatched any of these movies, but hey.
Well, Thor Ragnarok's only been out for like 2 weeks at this point.
Yeah, but I fucking loved that movie. I'm surprised.
I know. I'm surprised I haven't gone back to see Black Panther. I might see if Black Panther's still in cinemas after I've rewatched Thor Ragnarok, so I can actually feel like I've watched them all in order.
Okay. Well, we're off to go and see if we can get tickets to see Black Panther again. You guys stop listening to this because it's over. Goodbye, everyone.